90% of self-improvement YouTubers don't understand this about their audience. And until they do, I don't think they're really helping anyone. It's my understanding that we watch this content to extract lessons from the experiences of other people. Like, for instance, I might tell you about the time I got shit-faced and arrived late to work, or I tried to pick up too much weight at the gym and I injured my back. And by sharing that story, not only am I providing entertainment value, but there's also like a clear lesson to be learnt there. It's like me saying, don't do this dumbass thing, so you can like avoid making that same mistake. So in its rawest form, this content is me, the creator, giving advice on what to do and what not to do. And for a lot of YouTubers, their preferred way to convey this information is through storytelling. And what makes storytelling so good is it's like quite easy for our brain to process like complicated ideas through stories. Like imagine I just like read you out a page of notes on like a particular topic. You're gonna get bored quite quickly. Whereas if I tried to adapt those notes into like a story format, it's gonna be like a lot more engaging. You're gonna be able to process the information in a better way because you're more engaged with what I'm talking about. So storytelling is something that I'm actively trying to get better at to improve my videos. Like, think of someone like Hamza. He's mastered the art of storytelling. For years he had the Jeffrey versus Adonis intros. And those were very effective because they were able to like convey so many ideas within a short space of time. Like, as I said, it like made your brain easier to process these like things he was telling you because he was doing it in story format. And it's also like, it doesn't like outstay its welcome, only like occupies a short portion of the video, but it's successful in hooking the viewer in and like boosting the overall engagement. So the point is, when it comes to like the self-improvement niche on YouTube, storytelling is a crucial thing. But where I think these YouTubers are going wrong is they're going in with the expectation that them sharing their stories with their viewers is going to be enough to get them to change their behavior from like a bad habit to a good habit. They think the story alone is going to prevent someone from making this particular mistake. And I don't think that's true. I think that as a viewer, instead of trying to hear so many different stories from like all these different YouTubers, instead of making that your focus to try and like avoid making the mistakes, like going through like the negative experiences that you're hearing people talk about, I think your focus should be on writing your own stories. So obviously I'm not talking about sitting down at a desk with a pen and paper and writing a fucking story. I'm talking about life. I'm talking about living a story-worthy existence, challenging yourself, like doing things out of the ordinary, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone in all areas of life, like going out there and actually making some stories that are worth hearing. And I think, especially for young men, a really important part of the human experience is making mistakes. In other words, learning the hard way. Think about it this way. A YouTuber could give you like the most sound, logical argument on why you shouldn't do a specific thing. Like, they could couple that with like a great, engaging, entertaining story, but it will never evoke the same response from you as it will from them. It's never on its own going to be enough to get you to fully change your behavior, like take a drastic course of action like that. And the reason for that is because their story is their struggle. It's their pain. Imagine I was trying to tell you about different types of girls and relationships and stuff like that. Like why a girl who is always going out to the club, going out drinking with her friends is probably not the best type of person to get into a relationship with, versus like a girl who's got more wholesome hobbies, like she doesn't go to the club, she fucking like reads and does baking in her spare time. Like why it would probably be a better idea to get into a relationship with her. And then I gave you corresponding stories about my experiences with both types of girls. Like maybe the girl from the club was unfaithful to me and cheated, and maybe I had like a much better experience with the girl who was into like wholesome things. If you're listening to that as someone who's not super experienced with girls, my story alone isn't gonna like sway your decision making. It's not gonna be enough to make you reject that girl who's always going out. Like, especially if she's coming on to you, you're probably not gonna have the willpower to like reject her. you're probably just going to hook up with her. And the reason my story wouldn't have had the intended effect, which is stopping you from hooking up with her, is because you're kind of detached from it. You're not emotionally invested in my story because you haven't gone through the negative experience like that I went through. You haven't like gone through the pain and the struggle and also like the happiness and the joy of being with like the more wholesome girl. But if you did go through those things, like you got hurt by one girl and then ended up in a beautiful relationship with another girl, that's your own set of stories. That's something that you can actually get emotionally invested in. Those are like past experiences for you to learn from. That's like your pain or your happiness driving your future behavior. And even if your story is exactly the same as the story that I told you, even if I predicted like the outcome if you tried this specific thing, that's still like a lot more powerful for you because it's yours. What I think YouTubers in this space could do more of is just make content with the expectation that young people are going to go through a degenerate phase. Because that's what I went through. That's what all these YouTubers who you're looking up to went through. Because it's part of the process. It's like to get to the highs, you have to have experienced the lows at some point. Very few people in those age ranges, like teenagers and young adults, have their life together. It's like quite rare to find someone of that age who's like actually interested in something like discipline or like kind of like virtuous habits, like meditation, like, or someone who's a bit spiritual. They usually haven't like gone through that. They're still going to be like a bit of a degenerate. And then like the good stuff comes later. So part of my YouTube strategy is just like acknowledging that. Like I make these videos that are a bit more attention grabbing, like top 5 ways to get girls or something like that. Knowing that this is the kind of thing that young people are going to be interested in realistically. And then like once I've got them, once they're actually watching the video, I can kind of use my own influence to like steer them towards things like discipline and mental health. But that's why when I hear someone like Hamza, and I don't have any beef with Hamza, I really admire the guy. When I hear him telling people, like young people, like avoid all of this like degenerate behavior, like don't hook up with girls, don't have casual sex, stuff like that, because it's like, obviously it's like degrading your ability to have like an actual connection with someone, like for when you meet your long-term partner, the person who could become your wife. Because to me, it's realistic to expect that young men want to sleep with a lot of women. They want to do a lot of degenerate stuff. And again, I'm not saying I agree with it. I actually think it's kind of something that it's like a societal like expectation. Like I hate to be the guy who blames it on society, but it's kind of like an expectation for young men to be like studs and sleep with a lot of girls. And it takes a lot of mindfulness to resist that type of conditioning. And that's stuff that takes like years of meditation and journaling and things like that to resist. So we can't really expect that from the average guy who's probably just getting into self-improvement. And I almost think it's the responsibility of these young men to like learn to live with the decisions they make, to make those mistakes, to go through that and see that sleeping with loads of girls is just like absolutely soulless and it's not going to bring them any long-term fulfillment. I think there's a lot of value in them making that mistake rather than someone else kind of relaying that experience secondhand to them. And I'm not saying just live like a degenerate until your life falls apart and you inevitably have to fix everything. But I think most of the problems that young men experience can be found by just kind of like living life, like fucking leaving the house, getting out of your bedroom, like challenging yourself consistently, putting yourself outside of your comfort zone, giving yourself the freedom to make those mistakes. I think instead of YouTubers telling guys, avoid, we should almost be encouraging our viewers to go and find out for themselves. Like, we can provide like the basic level of guidance. Like, I did this particular thing, this is my story of that experience, and it didn't go well. I don't think you should do this because in most cases this is going to end badly for you, but by all means go and find out for yourself. We have to recognize that young people just have this natural curiosity to go and find out things for themselves. Like they'll make stupid decisions that have like consequences, but there'll be like a lesson buried in there that they can take forward into the future. And until they actually go and do it for themselves, they're not truly going to know whether it's right or wrong. And then when they like inevitably figure out that it was the wrong choice, they're going to come back to this particular YouTuber who's telling them otherwise with like a bit more loyalty. It's like they've gained some kind of credibility in their eyes. Like this guy knew what he was talking about. So in conclusion, stop relying on online content. Stop taking some other guy's experience as the absolute truth. Go out there and start writing your own stories.